Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Michelle Fondin. I'm the author of Heal Yourself, A Return to Wholeness, the integration of body, mind, soul, and spirit. I'm also the author of Twin Flame Romance, The Journey to Unconditional Love. All of my books are available in paperback, Kindle, and Audible books. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for subscribing below. Click on that bell, scroll up to all for all notifications. And thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. I do readings, 30, 60, and 90-minute readings, romance, general, twin flame, life path, and purpose. You can book that at my website, michellefondinauthor.com. Welcome to Removing Obstacles Thursdays, where we discuss a topic that might be an obstacle on your twin flame journey. Today, we are talking about, are you going to be one of the 10% who makes it? Now, when I talk about 10%, I'm not really talking about an exact percentage or an exact number. It is simply an illustration of something that I went through way back when I was going to law school in France. And something, when you think about it, people that are ultra successful when it comes to this world, when it comes to achieving goals, it really tends to be the top 10%, or even shorter than that, it tends to be like the top 3% that actually make it. The reason why I got the idea to produce this video this time in June of 2021 is that I have been sensing a lot of frustration in the twin flame community, especially with the Divine Feminine Collective. There may be some Divine Masculines here who are equally feeling very frustrated with this soul-connected journey. And the fact that, frankly, it's tough. It really is tough. It takes a lot of personal fortitude. It takes a lot of tenacity and stick-to-itiveness, another word for that. And if you are growing weary and frustrated and angry and you've had enough, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you don't need to take this to culmination in this lifetime. But for those of you out there who understand that this is difficult and that there are challenges and obstacles that need to be overcome, and that you're willing to stay the course, you're willing to walk that extra mile or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, even though you've already walked a marathon, for you guys, there will be great rewards at the other end. Now, let me just explain to you where I got this 10% and something that I personally went through back in the 90s. Yes, back in the 90s, when I was in law school in France. Now, it's really interesting as to the why I went to law school. I never really wanted to go to law school, but I met a challenge. I was kind of stubborn that my ex-husband, who was a love interest at the time, thought that I wasn't really intelligent because I was studying languages at the time. Now, big red flag. I know, I should have known. Big, huge red flag. And so in my stubbornness, I said, oh, you don't think I'm intelligent? Well, I'm going to go to law school and prove to you that I really am intelligent. Again, really dumb reason to do it. Big red flag I totally ignored, but I did it. Now, I was only in France for a year at that time. It was starting, I believe, no, it was actually 2 years at that time. I was starting my 3rd year of college in France where I had not been studying law. And so I had to go back to year 1. In France, you enter into year 1 of college in a particular discipline. And then if you pass, you go to year 2. There aren't really any entrance exams. You need to have the baccalaureate, which is the high school diploma, which is a bit more advanced than the American high school diploma. So I decided to do that. I went back to year 1, started in law school. I was in an amphitheater with about 900 students, other students, all 18 years old at the time. I was a little bit older, and they had just come out of high school. And the main professor of civil law, you had to pick like 2 majors or 1 major, or like 2 major courses, and then you had some minor courses. So I picked civil law and penal law, which most people did at that time. And the civil law professor stood in front of the amphitheater and stood in front of the class at the beginning of the year and said, there are about 900 of you here. At the end of the year, 10% of you will remain. That's it. The other 90% of you will not be here, because that is how they did their system. And then in second year, they weeded out about 50% of that 10%, who then went on to third year. Now, you could repeat the first year if you wanted to try to make it through. But for me, in trying to prove my point, I wasn't going to repeat the first year. I knew I needed to make it into that top 10%. Now, I had a ton of handicaps at the time. I really had no intention or desire to study law, even though it was super interesting to me. I didn't have a background in political science. I didn't have a background in history. I didn't really know much about law. So that was one major handicap. The other major handicap was French was a new language to me. I had been living in France for 2 years, but of course I had a lot of English-speaking friends. So while I was learning French, it was certainly not my first language at the time. Thirdly, this is studying law, which is a whole other language in itself. So not only did I have the handicap of not speaking the target language fully, which was French, I also did not have a Latin basis or a basis for legal terms, which included in the French lectures were these legal terms, which had a Latin base for the most part. I was at an extreme disadvantage, not to mention that I had not come out of a French high school. So I didn't know how they were supposed to present their exams. I didn't know how they were supposed to present their papers. It's a very, very different educational system from the United States. So I was, for all intents and purposes, at a great disadvantage. Now, throughout the year, what I had to do, we had classes from about 9 to 3. It works differently there than American colleges, from about 9 to 3. And then I would go home and transcribe my courses. Now, you might be wondering what that is. Well, I took a small tape recorder, which had these teeny tiny little cassettes. And they were usually used for like reporters that were going out into the field and they were recording their interviews. So I had this small cassette recorder that was used for like lectures and reporters with these teeny tiny little tapes that held about an hour's worth of material. So I had many of these tapes. And I would record all of my lectures all throughout the day, not knowing what half of those lectures were about because I didn't understand the language. Then I would go home and transcribe, like re-listen to the lectures and actually transcribe, writing in French every single word that was spoken for the entire day. Now you might be thinking, well, that's really dumb. Like, why did you do that? Why would you go to great lengths to do that? Like, why couldn't you just go back to like studying languages? And it's because I felt that not only to prove my point, but I felt that for me, getting that success of being in the top 10% of a law class in France was a great achievement for me. And I wanted that challenge and I wanted to do it. Now, the good news is I ended up making it into the top 10% and then moving on to my second year in law school in France. So my point to you is that even if you have a lot of handicaps in your way, albeit the challenges of being in a twin flame relationship with your twin flame either absent or ghosting you or blocking you or coming in and out of your life or creating havoc and problems, and then you dealing with your own personal items like being lonely and stressed and having low self-esteem, having codependent behavior and not feeling like you're enough, and all of those things that surface, know that you can actually make it through if you are steadfast to the journey itself, knowing that at the end there are great rewards to come. And, another analogy that I'd like to throw into this is like the diamond in the rough, right? So how is a diamond formed? A diamond is formed, and I know I brought this up before, but I really like it. The diamond is formed with intense pressure, stress, and heat, and it's formed over time. It is not formed overnight. It takes years, decades, centuries, I don't know, but it takes a really long time for a diamond to be formed under high pressure and intense heat and being compressed way below the Earth's surface. So, that being said, when that diamond does through a volcanic eruption or moving of the tectonic plates or however the diamonds come to the surface of the Earth, it has already been through so much, and then you have this beautiful crystal. And what I want to say to you is that it is all too easy to say, oh, it's too hard. I don't want to do this anymore. This is stupid. This doesn't even really exist. And then you abandon the journey, which is fine. You are totally in your right to abandon the journey. But if you really want to come out victorious at the other end, and in the end, this is a journey between you and you. You see, here's the thing. When I made it into the top 10% of my law class in that first year of law school in France, in all reality, it was a battle between me, myself, and I. It truly had nothing to do with this other person who became my husband and is now my ex-husband, which I don't even think he knew it at the time. I don't even think I told him. It was just one of those things inside of me that I was like, oh, okay, he says I can't do this, or, be a smart person, then I'll do it. It was really a battle between me, myself, and I. It had nothing to do with any other person. And that victory, the victory of making it, was a victory for me. It wasn't a victory for anybody else but me, because nobody but myself knew how hard I worked to obtain the outcome, the result that I was seeking. Nobody knew. Nobody knew about the 8 hours I would put in every single day reading material and transcribing those lectures. Nobody knew but me. Of course, I had friends at the time and they would be like, what are you doing? You're studying? Well, in law school, people study all the time, so it's not a big deal. But I feel it for this twin flame journey, there are a couple of fallacies that are keeping you from being in that top 10%. Again, the number is just there so I can illustrate this example. Who knows what the real number is? I'm not God. I don't know. How many twin flames are going to make it through? I'm not sure. I really don't know. So here are a couple things that are getting in your way. Your steadfast fixation on timelines. That is number one. Your steadfast fixation on timelines. We should already be here right now. We should already be together right now. We should already be married right now. And when you are fixated on those timelines, rest assured, it's going to create misery for you. Each and every day, it will always create misery for you. And the second thing is not understanding that the internal suffering that you choose is really about you and yourself. The internal suffering that you are choosing is not based on your twin flame at all. It's not based on that person at all. It's that you are choosing your own suffering. And you might be asking me, like, what does that mean? That doesn't make any sense. Why would I choose my own suffering? Well, we all create rules for ourselves in anything that we move through in life, right? We all create those rules for ourselves. Some rules are externally enforced, but most of the rules that we move by, especially when it comes to relationships, are internally reinforced. They are not externally reinforced. So, for example, your willingness to embrace loneliness, for example, and being alone and being in solitude and finding the time to look at yourself, right? So if you look at that as an asset, if you look at that time as like a gem, something precious to behold, then you're really going to learn everything you can learn about solitude and being alone and looking at yourself in the mirror and being with yourself. But if you look at that same thing as torture, because I'm not in a relationship, I don't have someone to reflect back to me, I don't have the love of my life, I am miserable, then you're going to be miserable, rest assured. And so any misery that you are feeling in the midst of the twin flame journey, and really, if you're really suffering, take my boot camp number 2, Twin Flame Divine Feminine boot camp number 2. The link is below to start on demand today, because I really take you through all of these aspects of how to self-reflect into moving through these pain points. But if you're in this sense of misery and saying, I can't stand to be alone, I can't stand to be alone, I can't stand to be alone, it's going to create so much havoc and turmoil in you that rest assured you're going to want to abandon the journey, because that discomfort of, in the example, solitude, that discomfort is there to teach you something. It's there so that you can take a look at it and say, what is this really about? Why is this discomfort here right now? Now, if the discomfort is there because you know that you've been doing all of your internal work, right? You've been doing the self-reflection, you've been doing your meditation, you've been exploring your childhood wounds, you've been exploring your inner child and trying to make your inner child happy. You've been doing like self-parenting to go through those like mother or father wounds, that you've been loving and kind to yourself, that you've been working on your health and fitness. So if you've truly been trying to heal all these aspects of your life, and then you're like, wow, I've been doing so much internal work. I've been taking these workshops and courses and therapy and yoga and meditation and all this stuff, and I've just been journaling like crazy, and I've had all these aha moments and self-discoveries, and wow, I feel so incredibly empowered. And then if you take a look at something like solitude and you go, you know what? Okay, and there's a video I produced on like, should I date someone else other than my twin flame? And I'll put the link right here. But if you just go, you know what? I feel like, I've done so much work, and I feel like, where I was before, I was so insecure and so codependent, and I always had this void if I wasn't in a relationship. But now I feel like amazing and fantastic, and I could spend a month alone and like, with my friends. And even if I'm not in a romance, it doesn't really matter, because like I'm having so much fun. And then if you're at that point of, solitude doesn't feel good just because I want companionship, right? So at that point, if you need to be with someone else or date someone else while you're still on this twin flame journey, because your twin flame is not remotely ready, as an example, then it's really coming from a place of wholeness. It's not coming from a place of void or anger or frustration or I want to leave this journey. So do you understand how like we create our own suffering? And if we have these red flags or these moments where we are so triggered and we need to stop and evaluate, where is this coming from? And then if it's coming from a place where I really feel whole, but I have this piece of my life that I'd like to share with somebody else, then so be it. But do you realize that by taking on, for example, solitude as a vow almost, right? As a vow saying, I need to follow these strict rules to be a twin flame. And so I can't so much as look at a person that I'm attracted to, because that wouldn't be proper to be a twin flame. Or I have to do all this book work every single day because that's what you have to do when you're a twin flame. Or I have to, do A, B, and C, whatever things that you've conjured up in your head, then that too can create suffering. So when you're in the flow and when you're moving according to your right life path, when things come up, you deal with them. You can be proactive about certain things in your life. But if you are on your right life path and if you are going the long haul, right, because this twin flame journey, like most goals, honestly, like most long-term goals, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's honestly not a sprint, okay? And I think that that's something that you really need to ponder if you want to be the top 10% or the 10% that make it, or the 3% that make it, who knows, right? You need to look at it as a marathon, and that timelines are fluid and moving and they don't really matter, but that what does matter is your relationship with yourself. And if you haven't had an adequate getting in touch in person relationship with yourself, where you are loving yourself so much and you're receiving that love from the divine, whatever you want to call it, right? And you know that you are completely adored and completely loved, and that anything that is in your life path is going to serve you the greatest purpose if you just say yes to it. And believe me, and I say this every time, I am on this journey too. Okay, so I know exactly how hard it is. I'm not immune to that, no more than you are. It is just as hard as for me as it is for you. I just live by a different set of rules. So my rules are like, I don't have to suffer by this. I can learn from it, but I don't need to suffer by this. Just like when I was in my first year of French law school, I could have been in a self-pity party saying like, why do I have to go home and transcribe 7 hours of professor lectures of all these classes when my French friends just to get to go out and party? I don't get to do that every day. I lived by, this is what I've been dealt with. So I'm going to deal with it. And the reward was truly great because I had pride in myself. I had pride that, wow, I made it. I made it against all odds. And so I truly deserve to be in that top 10%. And I knew that from the inside, and it didn't matter what anybody else said to me, it mattered to me. I hope this was helpful to get you through the obstacles on your twin flame journey. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Click on that bell, scroll up to all for all notifications. And thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. Thank you for sharing this video with other twin flames. And thank you so much for your support of my YouTube channel. You can buy a book or 2 or 3. You can join a boot camp. You can pledge your support on Patreon, www.patreon.com/Michelle S. Fondin, and I will see you in the next video.